It's Ichiro weekend. No, by the way, Julio Rodríguez just signed an extension. Let's talk about it here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered all season long with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. It is Friday, August 26, 2022, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms with new episodes dropping every Monday through Friday. I am your host, Ty Gonzalez, joined as always by my co-host, Colby Patnode. We cover the Mariners over at InsideTheMariners.com for Fan Nation over on the Sports Illustrated Network. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at LO_Mariners. Follow Inside the Mariners at Inside Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, that's CANE_GNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. Be sure to also check out our Patreon over at patreon.com/control-the-zone. We post 2 additional podcasts on there every single week. Again, that is patreon.com/control-the-zone. And if this is your first time joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast, welcome to the show. There's no better time to join us than today. And if you like what you hear, give us a follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, give this video a thumbs up. We greatly appreciate it and would greatly help us out. On the show today, we're going to dive into the Julio Rodríguez extension. It is massive. We're going to talk about what it means for both sides, and we'll dissect the terms that have been reported thus far. And as one Mariners legend continues to grow, we'll reflect back on another as Ichiro gets set to be inducted into the Mariners Hall of Fame this weekend. But first, let's start with the 21-year-old sensation, Julio Rodríguez, who signs a 14-year extension, though some of the details on that are a little murky. We'll talk about that later on in the show, but for now, Colby, let's talk about what it means for the Mariners organization and what it means for Julio Rodríguez himself to sign this extension.
It's huge. I mean, it's for the Mariners, it's the largest amount. It's likely going to be the largest amount of money they'll ever pay for anybody. On the surface right now, Cano still has a bigger contract at $240 million, but with the incentives that Julio seems likely to reach, Julio will end up being the highest paid Mariner of all time, at least for now. It's a big commitment from Julio, who, we knew that Julio really loved the Seattle Mariners. We knew that he was, very fond of the city and the organization, and he believes in them, and he believes in the plan going forward. And a 14-year commitment certainly proves that that is not just talk. So it's relatively low risk considering right now if the deal just is what it is. It's $15 million a year AAV. That's a steal for Julio. Again, structure here is going to be pretty important. There are apparently opt-outs from both sides, or I guess maybe just team options tacked on at the end. That we have to wait and see there. But at the end of the day, there's basically 0% chance this deal blows up on the Mariners. Julio gets, $210 million guaranteed in his bank account, with apparently the possibility of ending up the highest paid player in Major League Baseball history. So it's one of those things where there's really no downside for either side. Julio signs up, and it's a acknowledgement, I guess, that he believes what the Mariners are doing. He believes that the direction of the organization is the right one, and it's also an acknowledgement from the Mariners themselves that we are not going to let Julio Rodríguez leave Seattle in his prime. We will put up the money. We will spend the money. Now they still have to prove that they will this offseason, but this is a really good first start to lock down your superstar, to lock down a guy who really has the potential to be the greatest player in franchise history. And, considering that Alex Rodriguez and Ken Griffey Jr. played on in this franchise for most of their career. Well, Griffey, at least most of his career. That's really saying something. So it's a huge day for the Mariners. It's a huge day for Julio. It's a big day for us Mariner fans, and it's exciting. I wouldn't sweat the details too much. That's our job. We'll break it down for you guys. Just celebrate. It's Julio Day. every day for the next 14 years, that's something we're talking about and celebrating. So, welcome Mariner legend Julio Rodríguez already. You might as well just start working on that number retirement that's going to go up there in the rafters next to Griffey and Edgar, because the kid's special, and he chose Seattle twice now. He chose Seattle twice now. And that means something, both, in the clubhouse, both in the front office, and also to the fan base. He chose Seattle twice, when he had plenty of other options, to go with. So it speaks to what Julio believes in, and it speaks to the direction of the Mariners. It's a great day all around. There's really no way you can complain. Even I can't complain about today, and that's probably saying something.
August 26, 2022. Remember that day, Mariners fans. This is the day that your organization made a significant commitment to winning, to, building something great and sustaining it long term. This is what that means. This is what the extension represents for the Seattle Mariners. And for Julio Rodríguez to do what he has been able to do as a 21-year-old superstar, some of the accomplishments that he's already gathered here are unprecedented. He's already a member of the 2020 club with 20 home runs, 20 steals. He's set major league records for the pace that he's been on. He's an incredible player. He has the chance not to only be the greatest player in Mariners history, to be one of the greatest players in MLB history. That's the talent that we're talking about. We're talking about a Mike Trout level talent. Mm-hmm. The Mariners had to get this done. Julio Rodríguez is a once in a lifetime type of player. You don't let those guys slip by. And the Mariners have, unfortunately let that slip through their fingers in the past. And it's come back to haunt them. And you don't want to make the same mistake here. And now, for years and years, we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about if this ever gets done. We don't have to worry about Julio ever leaving, right? The only way that Julio ends up exiting Seattle the rest of the way here is because the organization forced it, more or less. Or he just goes down the gutter, right? And that's not going to happen. I don't think anyone believes that's going to happen, right? So, at this point, we don't have to worry about it. Julio's here. He's ours. He's a Seattle Mariner. One of the greatest players in baseball is a Seattle Mariner for the long haul. And he chose to be here. This isn't, just a matter of, they had his rights. They drafted him, whatever. No, as Colby said, he chose them twice. He chose them in the international signing period. And he chose them today. He wants to be a Seattle Mariner for, if the other report about this deal possibly being more like a 20-year deal is true, Julio Rodríguez wants to be a Seattle Mariner for the rest of his life. And even this deal probably signifies that. That's incredible to me. As a Mariners fan who's been tormented for so many years, that has constantly heard about how the top players in the world don't want to play in Seattle, to see this happen, to have Julio Rodríguez say yes to the Seattle Mariners, to say yes to the city of Seattle, it means everything to me.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a big day. I guess the last time the Mariners had anything close to this is when they signed Felix the second time. Mm-hmm. But this just it feels different because Felix at that point was established. This is the Mariners staking their claim on, this is the Mariners saying essentially Julio Rodríguez is our franchise, and we will build around him year after year after year. And we believe in him. And so like I said, it's a great deal for the Mariners. It's the deal you take when you're Julio, because unfortunately the system is kind of rigged against you from maxing out your earning potential. If Julio was a free agent at the end of this year, he would make $35-40 million a year. And that's even with, just hitting 269 and going, 2020 because he's so young, because his upside is so immense. It's a great deal for the Mariners. There's, again, literally no one should complain about this. I guess I complain about the timing, but no, it's a great day for the Mariners. It's a great day for Julio, and I imagine we'll see a press conference. They might wait until maybe Monday to do that. I don't know if they want to overshadow Ichiro weekend or anything like that, but I would expect there's going to be a press conference at some point in the next few days to formally announce the deal. But it's passing now. It's Jesse Sanchez. It's Ken Rosenthal. Like, it's done. It's done.
Yeah.
We're just waiting. The devil's going to be in the details, and we don't have those details quite yet, but we're learning a little bit more here and there. And basically, no matter what the details say, it's a fantastic day for the Seattle Mariners and for Julio Rodríguez and his family.
Yeah. Go and get paid. 21 years old, and you just got broken off. I mean,
generational wealth.
$450 million potentially. Incredible. Let's get into the details in just a moment. Real quick, though, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline is where the game starts. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen of the day. You know what? Today, we're the Locked On Julio Rodríguez podcast, and we're the Locked On Ichiro podcast. Let's get into this contract for Julio. So there's some conflicting reports out there, but there's also some reports that, have basically confirmed the basic details of the deal. It's 14 years. It's $200 million-ish guaranteed, with a possibility to earn up to around $450 million. That report coming from Jesse Sanchez of ESPN, and pretty much confirmed by Jeff Passan, who said that it was going to be well north of $400 million. So wherever that number lies, we still have to see. We don't have the exact specifics. We're still learning. There's still more stuff coming out, probably even as we're speaking right now, and maybe even as you're watching this right now. So let's just talk about that in general, because this is higher than the Acuna deal, just in terms of overall money, right? I don't know how it exactly breaks down on an annual average basis, but this is more than Tatis, at least in terms of the $450 million part. $200 million is less than what Tatis was guaranteed, of course. But this is more than Wander Franco. This is kind of an unprecedented deal here for Julio Rodríguez, plus 14 years. Like, you don't really see 14-year deals happening all the time in Major League Baseball. So let's kind of dive into that. What do you think about the deal?
Yeah, there's right now really the only thing I'm waiting for is, I believe Passan reported that there are both player and team options in this deal. So I'm wondering if those are true options or if they are opt-outs, particularly on Julio's side of things. So those are kind of going to be huge, because if Julio has an opt-out after like year 8, he's probably going to take it. It doesn't mean he's leaving, right? It just means that why not go explore free agency, see what's out there, and come back to Seattle and ask if they want to match. So again, I don't know if they're opt-outs or options. Bob Nightingale, which again, but he seems to believe that they are options, which could run the contract to a grand total of 20 years. So we'll see that. I mean, I hope he's right, but
Yeah.
Bob, he's not very good at this. Let's just say it. He's not very good at this.
Especially like
the Mariners.
Yeah, like arbitrary stuff like this as well. He's not good with at all. Like he makes mistakes like that pretty often, where he thinks that he's connecting the dots and he's just like not at all. So
right. And
let's
he also
take this with the smallest grain of salt here.
Right. And he also won't ever clarify if it was just him like speculating, or if like somebody's told him this, just like he did in his last tweet that suggested maybe the deal goes up to 20 years. So on the surface right now, all we know for sure is that there's 14 years. It's $210 million guaranteed. That's been reported by Passan. Incentives, Jesse Sanchez is saying up to $450 million, might be a little bit 460 maybe, I've seen thrown out there. So we'll see. Again, to me, the big issue, or not issue, the big question here is where are the options? Are they opt-outs? Are they options? Are they on the back end of the contract? Are they in the middle? What are the team options? I guess for Julio, obviously he's very concerned about those options as well, but he wants to know what the incentives are. And he does. Like, the Mariners and Julio know what the incentives are and all that stuff. We just don't know yet. So, the reasonableness of the incentives in this deal are kind of going to give Julio a pretty good idea of how much this contract is actually going to be worth. So we'll see. I mean, I assume there's incentives for all-star game appearances, MVP votes, MVP awards, silver sluggers, gold gloves, all that stuff. Probably pretty hefty. So we'll see where it all goes. But right now, latest update, as I literally refresh Twitter every 25 seconds, making sure we didn't miss anything, is that it's 14 years. It's $210 million guaranteed, up to 460, I think is the highest number I've seen, with incentives. There are options according to Passan. We don't know for sure if those are true options or if they're opt-outs. And apparently they are on both sides of this deal. Right. The Mariners have some leverage here. Julio has some leverage here. So it's a pretty complicated deal. It's not your standard contract extension. But we shouldn't expect anything less with Jerry Dipoto running the show. He's going to get creative to get a deal done if he wants to. And it appears that he did here, but at the end of the day, Julio Rodríguez is a Seattle Mariner for at least the next, I would guess, 10 years. So who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
So let's kind of talk about those options where they might fall a little bit more here. If I had to guess, I would think, because it has to make sense for the team to do this, right? Because they want to buy out free agency years. If they're spending this kind of money, they want to buy out free agency years, because otherwise they would just go year to year with Julio, and that would be that, and they would just go through arbitration and save a whole lot of money. So I would think that at the very least, the opt-out is either before or after year 10 for Julio. And then there might be a team option around year 7, year 8, which I would think the Mariners wouldn't even hesitate at picking up, right? So that would be my guess as to where these things fall. Do you agree? Where do you think all of this stuff might fall?
Yeah, I think, again, because Julio, like, the Mariners aren't going to give him an opt-out after 6 years. Like, that would be dumb. Or I guess it would just be pointless, really. But if you're Julio, you probably still want to hit free agency at around, if you are going to hit free agency, you probably want to do it, 28, 29, 30. So, his age 30 season would end in 9 years, since he's 21. So yeah, I think the opt-out coming, after year 8, is probably the earliest. I think after year 9 is probably the most realistic, if there is an opt-out. Again, they might be options, but we'll see. I think, yeah, it's at least, my guess is Seattle got at least 9 guaranteed years of Julio. That would be my guess, if there is an opt-out. So I guess I would take him through the 2030 season, would be 9 full years. So that would be my guess. It's total speculation, but I think that makes sense. Julio hits the market where he still might get another mega contract, but the Mariners buy out enough free agent years to make it worth it to them to give Julio the $210 million guaranteed.
And it seems like a pretty well balanced deal. Obviously, like you said earlier, if Julio hit the market right now, he'd make more than this on an annual basis, because I think it shakes out really to about $15 million a year for the first little bit here. So, so the Mariners are obviously getting a very team-friendly deal. Let's not beat around the bush here. But I also think, with Julio as well, I mean, injuries can happen, stuff can derail his career. Of course, there's a lot of stuff that can happen here. So I think, for Julio, it does make sense to do this as well. And this is a good deal for him. I mean, this is, as you said, generational wealth, right? Like, he could definitely make more if he hit the market or if he bet on himself, and he stayed healthy and everything provided, but that's a gamble that you have to take if you want to go down that route. And
Evan
that's,
White and Mitch Haniger are the cautionary tale.
right, right.
So
That's the risk that you have to assume there if you are willing to bet on yourself. And Julio just ended up taking the money, and I can't blame him. He made a decision today. He made a business decision for him and his family. And while he could probably, if just foreseeing what he might end up becoming down the road, while he could make much more than this, I think it was a good decision for him to take this in the end. If he truly believes that, then yeah, it's a good decision. Whatever he wanted to do, it's a good decision. So good for him, good for Julio, good for the organization for, ponying up here and paying out. Again, it's nowhere close to what Julio may end up, would otherwise end up making on the market. But it's still it's still not nothing from the organization, to be sure. They were willing to spend some money here, and that's good. That's a good sign for things. Hopefully, they follow that up with more. Luis Castillo extension coming up next would be pretty nice, I would say. Would love to see that get done here in the coming months.
I still think that gets done, by the way. So,
absolutely.
Mariners, going to dump some money into keeping their own, quote unquote, which is great. Now you have to follow it up.
Yeah,
Absolutely. This is dipping a foot in the water. This is not the cannonball. Cannonball comes in the winter, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. But you're showing that you're willing to go big on contracts. You're showing that you are willing to expand payroll down the road. So now continue to follow that up. Let's
the addition of Luis Castillo and the extension of Julio Rodríguez is also a message to the rest of Major League Baseball, the players, that we are serious about winning here, and we are willing to spend both trade and money to make sure that we sustain a winner here, and that does carry value.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go from Julio to Ichiro, who is being inducted into the Mariners Hall of Fame. And if it wasn't for the Julio extension today, this whole show was probably going to be Ichiro-centric, or at least most of it. So unfortunately, we're going to have to put this all in one segment today. But when I say the name Ichiro Suzuki to you, Colby, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Really terrible fashion sense. Just cut Ichiro to his core, I guess. No, it's...
You weren't going to leave this episode without saying something.
Nah. First, when you say Ichiro, that's tough, man. Because Ichiro is an enigma, yet incredibly simple. He loves baseball, and that's basically the biggest thing about Ichiro. He loves baseball. I guess for me, the first moment that comes to my mind is the throw to nail Terrence Long. It was early in his rookie year. He was, he's chugging along. He's playing fine. Nothing really that would lead you to believe, he was a star or anything like that. And then the throw and the call from Niehaus, of course, adds to it. But I mean, it might've been the most perfect throw I've ever seen. Just glove height, right to the bag. David Bell didn't even have to move his glove. Ball popped in the back of his glove, and Long slid right into it and looked back in disbelief. Terrence Long was really fast back in the day, and he could not believe that Ichiro had just done that to him. So that's kind of the first thing I think of. There's a lot of moments with Ichiro that come to mind, but the very top of my list is the throw. It was kind of the coronation of the Mariners might have something really special here, and it's the one that always sticks out to me.
Yeah. What I think about is obviously the throw. That's obviously one of the big moments. 262 hits. Have to think about that moment. I have to think about, the All-Star game, the infield single against Randy, and, beating him to the bag, kind of the symbolism of that, and what that whole year meant for the Mariners as they went into a new era. Going from the Griffey, A-Rod, Randy teams and going into the, the Ichiro, Cameron, Edgar, Buhner, those teams, that's, and he led one of the greatest teams of all time, right? As a rookie, he won MVP as a rookie. For
MVP,
one of the greatest teams of all time.
Yeah.
That's
MVP,
insane.
Rookie of the Year, Gold Glove, Silver Slugger, I believe, all in his first year.
Yeah.
Led Major League Baseball in hits, stolen bases that year, batting average. Yeah, I mean, and that's like, so you just scratch the surface. You remember the Spider-Man catch against Garrett Anderson and the Angels. You remember the walk-off home run against Mariano. That's always a big one towards the tail end there. You remember the inside the park home run in the All-Star game to, ball hits the corner in San Francisco and it scurries away from who? Ken Griffey Jr. of all people.
Yeah.
And Ichiro gets the inside the park home run. And then I think one of the cooler memories that is not really baseball related. You remember what was it? The year one of Jack Sorensic. It was Ichiro and Griffey being carried off the field. It was cool because those are two like Seattle Mariners icons who kind of came together and found friendship and all that stuff. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's not a baseball memory per se, like on the field memory, but it just, you remember the bond that Ichiro and Griffey had, even Griffey at the end of his career and Ichiro at the end of really his prime, was exiting his prime at that point. So it's just one of those memories that there's a lot of cool things with Ichiro, but at the end of the day, Ichiro is synonymous with the Seattle Mariners. And to this day, he's made it a priority to be involved with the Mariners. And that's something special. That's something not a lot of players have done, to be, so loyal to the Mariners and so eager to be a part of what's going on. So yeah, it's Ichiro. I guess like if you're looking for like a word for Ichiro, I think the first word that would come to mind is discipline. Just incredibly disciplined in his regiment and, his routines, and his meticulous is probably another good word. Just always stretching, always making sure everything was in the right, same batting practice every day. The swing has to be perfect, bats in the humidor, all that stuff. And so it's just one of those things where Ichiro has like relief pitcher, like crazy vibes, you know what I mean? Like where it's like, oh, I have to touch my hat 3 times before I throw every pitch. And it's like, that's lefty reliever crazy, but also just like the attention to detail is incredible.
He's baseball personified, man.
Yeah.
Like, he's literally baseball. Like that's who Ichiro is.
And I think Ichiro maybe doesn't get enough credit for becoming a superstar in the home run era.
Yeah.
When he himself was not a home run hitter. He was a throwback to the 1910s, pretty much. Slap the ball around, steal bases, high average, maybe occasionally pop a home run, but mostly, I'm going to hit a single. I'm going to put the ball in play at all costs. Then I'm just going to steal second base and count it as a double. Stop me. And you couldn't. The infield hits are just,
yeah.
Ichiro is just so different and so unique in an era that was all about Barry Bonds and the steroid era was still going relatively strong at that point. And so Ichiro was unique and he was different and he was fun still. It was a completely different brand of baseball than what we had seen since the strike. Basically, it was a throwback in the middle of the steroid era, which is something that I don't know if Ichiro gets enough credit for.
Just thinking about the iconography of Ichiro's legacy as well. I mean, obviously, one of those, the sleeve tug, the just the overall swag that he had, both on and off the field, right? Especially on the field, like we got the wristbands, we got the sunglasses. I mean, I wanted to be Ichiro. I'm sure a lot of people listening to the show wanted to be Ichiro, if they're kind of in our age range, of course. Yep. And like what he became beyond baseball, beyond what he was on the field, he became a superhero in the city of Seattle. You think about like the songs people would make. I remember being in the car with my brother listening to Cube 93 and they had like the Ichiro. Yeah. And like Ben Gibbard of Death Cab for Cutie making the Ichiro song where he talks about Dave Niehaus and all that stuff. It's like just what Ichiro became for this city, for me as a kid who grew up idolizing like Spider-Man and stuff like that. I mean, Ichiro was like real life Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Seriously. Like it was like he was a superhero. He was like something out of a comic
Eh,
book, and like
he was more real life, like Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, because he was very cool.
yes.
Um, but yeah, it's insane. Ichiro's legacy in Seattle right now probably only eclipsed by Griffey, I would say, just in
Mhm.
terms of legacy, national legacy, international legacy, really.
Yeah.
To me, Edgar Martinez is like the Mariner. Like you say, Seattle Mariners, the first player I think of is Edgar. Uh, it's not Griffey, but like on a national and international stage, you say Seattle Mariners, people are going to tell you either Griffey or they're going to tell you Ichiro.
Yeah.
And so those two players are just unparalleled right now. Maybe Julio gets there. In fact, I think he probably does at some point. But right now, it's if you're looking at like the hierarchy of the Mariners Mount Rushmore is probably Ichiro, Griffey, Edgar, and Dave. Right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's in some combination. It's one of those four.
I believe we did an episode where we did a Mount Rushmore, right?
Yeah. Yes, and maybe I'll put Julio on there. Probably have to bump Griffey for it, but Griffey quit on the Mariners 3 times, so like, but it's negative. But no, I think one of the cool I actually came to respect Ichiro even more after he left Seattle, and then he came back, and I was not a fan when they signed him in what was that 2018. Ben Gamble went down and they signed him, and that was such a pathetic move. Ichiro was so toast by then. It was sad to watch. Yeah. And then they brought him back in 2019, and I was like, fine, whatever. They're playing in Japan. I get it. But even after that, Ichiro, who, has more money than God, can literally do whatever he wants, be wherever he wants to be in the world. Where is he every summer? He's hanging out in Seattle catching bullpens and throwing batting practice. Like that love for baseball is just unparalleled, I think, in the history of the game. Because go find me another major leaguer who's out there, catching batting practice or throwing batting practice and catching bullpens on, for a guy on a rehab assignment while the team's out of town, shagging fly balls every day, taking batting practice every day, showing up to work in full uniform, batting gloves included. Like Ichiro is like the dedication is just insane, and the discipline and just the love of baseball is something that it's very Julio-esque, and it's very different because Julio is much more out there and he's much more like I don't want to say emotion. It's not like Ichiro's a robot, but Ichiro showed his love in baseball by, sticking around it for so long and just the incredible discipline to be great at it. And Julio shows it more in an outward way, and he has a lot of fun. And so it's kind of two different ways to look at it, but Ichiro's love of baseball, I don't know if it has an equal in Seattle Mariners history. And it continues to be one of the most impressive traits about him long after he's retired.
Absolutely. So you're going to be at Ichiro's Hall of Fame induction tomorrow. And that should be a lot of fun. Sold out crowd already for that one. It's going to be obviously a big game for the Mariners as well, going up against the Guardians. Big series. Huge weekend. A lot of fun stuff happening in the Mariners sphere right now. A lot of great stuff. This is a great day in Mariners history. Remember this day, Mariners fans. This could be a very, very, very special one. All right, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. Follow Inside the Mariners at Inside Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez. That's DaneGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen of the day. And after the extension, now make your second listen the Locked On MLB podcast. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings humor, passion, and unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. Follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts just like us. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day and a beautiful baseball weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. Peace. Go M's.